and welcome to our community. Susie Thomas here with you this morning, and we are visiting with friends from the Stark County District Library. We've got Mary Anna DiGiacomo and Julia Shaheen. Good morning to both of you.
Good morning.
We want to also give a shout out to Jen Walenchik. Am I saying that correctly? Jen Walenchik, and she is the person who made all this possible. So hats off to you, Jen. Thank you for kind of being here and for helping us out so much this morning. First of all, Julia, I want to start with you because I think one of the coolest events that this community does is the One Book, One Community event. First of all, for newbies, what is that?
One Book, One Community is a community read effort. It involves the Stark County District Library and several independent libraries throughout Stark County, Massillon, Louisville, North Canton, Minerva, and Canal Fulton. And we get together a couple times during the year. We read some books together, as well as some community members too, educators and volunteers that want to be a part of it. And we choose a book that we think the community will latch onto, will enjoy reading together, and we plan a few programs, some book discussions, and then we get together in the month of October this year, and we put all of it together.
And so you have a whole town reading the same book.
Yes.
And with some really fun book discussions, and also the author often comes in, right, and talks to them?
Yes. The last few years we've been really lucky to have the authors come in for a visit and do programs, presentations, book signings, things along those lines.
What makes for a good book, for one book?
It needs to be something that is relevant to the community. Something that has a good storyline or that involves the community in some way, shape, or form. Like we've had the book A Secret Gift, which involved the city of Canton. We've also had the Chris Spielman book, and he was a local. He's local to the area.
That's why I'm here.
That's why I'm here, and. So we've done books that are local to the area, but we've also had books that, like this year's book, Gaining Ground by Forrest Pritchard, which isn't necessarily local, but the topic, farm to table, Whole Foods, that kind of thing, is a local issue that we have because so many areas are starting their own community gardens, so many areas have farmers markets, and it's a really big movement, not only in our area, but all over.
You must read a ton of books to try and decide which would be a good one.
Well, luckily we have a pretty nice sized committee that can help choose, read some books, narrow it down, and then we all read probably. Some of the committee reads them all, and some of us read about 3 or 4 of them. So,
do you have a hard time deciding, or are some people just passionate about certain ones, or
both? We have very, very passionate people that love the books that they've read, and they speak very highly of them, and they really convince the committee that this would be a great read. And we also have, after reading some, we just decide, it's not going to be a great book for the whole community to read. So,
and who in the community do you gear this for? About how old, how young can participate?
All ages.
That's amazing.
Yeah, we really try and gear it for all ages because if it's, if we target children, they can bring their parents and grandparents. If we target grandparents and adults, they can read with their friends and book discussions and that kind of thing. So we try and have programs, and we try and pick books for all ages. So like this year, Gaining Ground, which is really probably more for high schoolers and adults. We also chose another book called Seed Folks by Paul Fleshman, which is really geared for middle school and upper elementary. And it's a really neat book that takes place in Cleveland, Ohio. It's totally fiction, but it takes place in Cleveland, Ohio, and it's about a fictitious neighborhood and an urban environment that transforms just a dilapidated old area into a beautiful community garden, but it's more about what the garden does for the community than the actual garden itself.
So how cool. Why did they pick Cleveland to put that as their location?
I'm not really sure the history on that particular book, but it's a really neat book. It's told in 13 different voices and 13 different chapters, and every character has their own voice, and it's all how their voices come together to create the neighborhood they live in.
So this year we're reading 2 books for 1 book? Mm-hmm. Changing the name of the event?
Maybe one theme.
Yes, because you both have the gardening, and that certainly fits with our community as far as garden and whole foods and healthy eating and so forth. So give us the details. What all events are taking place around both these books?
So the events that we have the author coming to the Palace Theater on October 18th, and then we have a dramatization that we're going to have the Stockdale brothers come to perform at, and then we'll have some community members perform scenes from Seed Folks, and that'll be at Varian's Orchard. And then Massillon Library is hosting a couple different programs all around the idea of farming and how to get your gardens ready for the winter and just different ways to urban farm and farming in your own community. North Canton is doing a similar program, a how-to festival on sustainable living, and Minerva Public Library is hosting a documentary series, 3 different documentaries all about the same topic, and all of the libraries will also be hosting book discussions. And then Louisville is also hosting a really big fun event on their green space where they're going to have animals, and they'll have experts in the field where you can talk to them and ask them questions and get information about farm to table and organic gardening and that kind of thing.
So cool. And us being in Amish country and everything, this is like old hat, isn't it? I mean, this is just a way of life, and how neat that it suddenly is so in vogue.
It should be really fun, and it's really timely, and I think that this time of year it'll be harvest time in October, so it'll all be coming to a slightly to an end, but it'll be a really great way to end the season with some really fun programs. So.
And I'll do our canning.
Yeah. And there'll be some canning programs too, at these events where you can learn some of that too.
Very cool. You got it all at the library. I'm telling you, this is amazing. Also, we used to call it the Bookmobile. It's now called the Mobile Smart Store. Mariana, tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, we are really excited about our new Mobile Smart Store. If you happen to be at the fair this past week, you may have seen it and been able to get on and get a tour, check some books out.
Cool.
It's 36 feet long, and it has approximately 2,400 items in it. And it works just like one of our regular libraries, except it's on wheels. You can do library card signups, check out books, put items on hold, sign up for events, and they actually hold events and classes on the Bookmobile as well. So it's really cool.
Where do you find drivers to drive around a library? That would be hard, I would think.
That would. Well, we're lucky that we have some very talented drivers that help us out with that and drive the Bookmobile around town so that people can take advantage of its great services.
So very cool. Well, speaking of a moving library, another library is moving,
That's
correct,
right.
in Jackson. Tell us what's going on.
Yes. So our Jackson branch is currently in a new location in Nobles Pond. We are, for about 2 years, we're going to be in this location as we design and build our new location, which will be in the vicinity of the old branch. But right now we've got the Smart Store in Nobles Pond, and it has all kinds of really cool things in it that we're testing out. It has a 24/7 lobby, so you can go into the library and take advantage of our services even when the library is closed. There's a DVD vending, book vending. There's Smart Store lockers. So if you put an item on hold, you can go into the locker anytime and pick up your item. So it's really testing some unique, innovative ideas in our new spot.
Amazing what's going on. And we should point out it's the Smart Store, but it's the store where everything is free.
That's right.
So if I understand this correctly, the old Jackson branch, that building is coming down, or is that going to be reused in another way?
Yes.
But that building's coming down, and you're going to build
we'll build a new
again.
one.
And in the meantime, Nobles Pond, what's the location? What's the address?
It is located actually right across the street. The plaza is kind of catty corner to where the old Jackson branch is.
Okay.
And we're by
So
the three brothers were kind of in that area over there.
everyone from that area knows exactly what you're talking about and can't miss it. You've got something amazing coming up. It's an author speaking series. And so tell us some of the people, before we get into who's going to kick it off.
Okay.
Let's talk about some of the people that you've got coming for that.
All right. Well, we are kicking it off in the fall with a very special author that we'll talk about in a minute. Mm-hmm. But we do have some really big names in our Speaking of Books series, and we're really excited. We have Terry McMillan, who's the author of How Stella Got Her Groove Back and Waiting to Exhale.
Wow.
So she's going to be at the Palace Theater on February 15th. So we're really hoping that that's going to be a great event.
Oh, my.
We're going to get a lot of people and a lot of interest for that. And also Garth Stein, who wrote The Art of Racing in the Rain, another really popular book. With a dog in it as well. So he's going to be at the Palace Theater in April. So that'll be the spring segment of our Speaking of Books series.
Oh, very cool. So how hard is it to actually get these authors to be able to come into our area?
Well, it's actually really fun. Julia and I work together on that. And we've got some connections with publishers. So we just kind of the same way that we do one book. We do a lot of research. Sometimes we'll get a suggestion from someone at the library, and we'll just do some digging, start making some phone calls, and scheduling them. So it's really exciting.
You are knocking it out of the park with the first one. Tell us a little bit about Michael Hingson and his book, Thunderdog.
Okay, so kicking off our Speaking of Books series on September 14th at the Palace is Michael Hingson. He wrote a book called Thunderdog. So it's an autobiography, and Michael Hingson is a blind man who was working in the World Trade Center on 9/11, and it's not only the story of how his guide dog helped him get out of the World Trade Center on that day. A lot of it's kind of the story of how he got to the World Trade Center that day as well, and just his whole life. So his family discovered that he was blind when he was 6 months old, and it was the doctors at that time suggested that he go into a home for the blind so that he could get care 24/7. But his parents refused to do that, and they brought him home and they raised him no differently than they raised his brother. There's a lot of really fun, good, cool things in the book. Mm-hmm. As he grew older, he learned how to ride a bike, and he'd ride his bike in the neighborhood. And he says in the book that his neighbors would call his dad and say, "Hey, did you know that your son's out in the middle of the street riding his bike?" And his dad would be like, "Okay, yeah, I know." And then he would say, "Well, it's the blind one." And his dad would be like, "Yes, we know, it's okay." Mm-hmm. So they didn't treat him any different. And because of that, he was really able to just do a lot of amazing things with his life.
And that relationship that he must have with his dog, who was named Roselle at the time. Roselle, dogs just don't last long enough, but Roselle was there for him on that day.
It really was.
And talk about that just a little bit.
Yeah, so he talks a lot in his book about his relationship with Roselle and how special that bond was, and how they were just so in sync. And on that day, during those horrible events that were going on, how she was really there, and she was struggling as well with, just everything, the fumes and the smoke and the dust after the buildings collapsed. It was really hard on her too, but she never left his side, and she was just, able to really help him not only get down those 78 flights of stairs, but even after they got on the street. I don't want to give too much away about the book, but she was really instrumental in helping to save Michael's life.
It's remarkable, even more remarkable. Thanks again to Jen Walensik, who was able to get for us Michael Hingson, and we are going to take a short break here. We're going to come back, and we're going to have Michael join us via the phone, and you'll get to hear from the author himself, author of Thunderdog. And before we do that, there's also a children's version of this, Running with Roselle?
Yes, that's right. You can come to the Stark County District Library and check that out. It's a great book to read to your kids, and it's a picture book about Roselle and Michael's story.
We're speaking with Mariana DiGiacomo and Julia Shaheen, both from the Stark County District Library. We'll be back after these words. You're listening to Our Community.